Yeah, don't throw any parties, because the fucking eye in the sky is coming for you.
Yeah.
Good use of the budget. Fucking Mayor
Like,
drones after.
Not a single person asked for that.
I don't think a single person really asked for anything that your illustrious mayor's done. You've had a real good track record with mayors.
That's true. That's very true. That is that's
it really just so it was Adams. Before that was DeBlanc. Like, you had some good cops. You had Money Mike there. He ruled. Yeah,
there's a video, and maybe not even sports fans, just people that have just been on Twitter over the past couple of years. But there was a video that a couple years ago, the Knicks won their first playoff game in a very long time, and the fans were celebrating in the streets. Everyone's having a great time. And there was a viral video that was going around of people Knick fan reactions to the win, whatever. And there was a guy that was like, "We had De Blasio, we had Cuomo. It was tough shit, but we have the Knicks."
Man, that's dire when that's your victory.
It was one game too. It was one game. It was a party in the fucking streets.
Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster. Living off borrowed time, the clock ticks faster.
But before it gets out of hand, just real brief preamble. Living Off Borrowed Time podcast, back after yet another unplanned hiatus, doing essentially the same thing we did last time, but in miniature. Last time we gave you the mid-year. I'm Patrick, he's Caleb. You pretty much know the deal at this point. Although, one of the other podcasts I listened to basically said that for every podcast, there's always somebody's first listen. I don't know if that's necessarily true with this one.
Well, I feel like that would be the case, but it would be artist-specific episodes. Like, people search their artist on YouTube and they're looking for songs, right? But then our shit comes up in one of the first few videos, or it comes up in a recommended. I don't think anyone's going to while we were away, more of a general talk episode as their first episode. That would be this would be down the line after you've already heard something, I feel like.
I feel like most people's first episode is probably the TV episode, and that's probably a lot of people's last episode too.
Well, that was just specifically, geo-targeted or something, or SEO targeted or something. So it was
for top 10 Jesse Pinkman owns or something.
He was looking for my favorite scene in 6 Feet Under. Oh my gosh.
Great 6 Feet Under reference on the Mike Eagle album, actually, when we get to that I did never ever expect to hear on a rap album. So I don't know how familiar you are with it. I already forget the TV episode, but how familiar are you with 6 Feet Under? You watched the whole thing.
I watched the whole thing. I only watched it once, to be fair, but it did leave an impression on me.
Did you listen to the Mike Eagle album or not? Did you get to that?
I did not. So that is another on-air Caleb L, one of many.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just talk about that briefly later. So, but yeah, the Living Off Borrowed Time podcast, doing another catch-up episode like you alluded to about you did with Ben last year, kind of while we were away, and we always do the mid-year. And this is I guess the third quarter report, more or less, because right after we did the mid-year, a lot of our favorite artists just decided to start dropping shit, more or less.
Yeah, it was uniquely hey, fuck you. Here's music.
A week later, I think she dropped Shy Boy might have dropped that day, I think, and then the album dropped right after that. Veeze dropped.
He dropped at the very end of June, so like a day or two after we posted the episode. So, and that was one that I had been anticipating for a long time. But yeah, and there was Carly, and you can keep going. I'm cutting you off on your preamble here, but so many artists.
So we're basically just going to do a miniature version of that. Like, we're unfortunately going to have to talk about, maybe some comment boxes again. Unfortunately, even though Kanye is not going to be really mentioned on this episode, although we're going to have to talk about the Travis album. So we're kind of talking about Kanye and absentia. We'll talk about that in a brief section. And we're going to have to talk about some bad shit real quick that I guess you made the point that unfortunately has kind of dominated the discussion. In one or two ways, some reactionary stuff. I'm mostly going to focus on the good stuff, as we try to, because generally it's not worth dwelling on bad things. But yeah, essentially the same structure as the mid-year and the year-end, just a little bit miniature, because it's been, again, one of the things I think we both agree on is that the most tired talking point this year has been there's no classics. Oh, there's no classics. Oh, it's been a really weak year because there's been a lot of mid. That's untrue. You're not paying attention. You're looking for something to fucking complain about.
Right, and also there's mid by the standards of the people making the critique, in my opinion. There's going to be overwhelmingly mid for them every year because they're not looking, like you just said. And for me, I would say, well, of course, there's over a lot of mid or a lot of uninteresting things that you can find every year. But that has always been the case. But if you just open your eyes more than like 1 millimeter wide, you'll be able to expand beyond conventional horizons. It's actually kind of been a privilege, I think, as it relates to rap music, which is what we talk about most on this podcast, that over the last however many years, in the 2010s and in the early 2020s, there was so much going on in hip hop at a mainstream level that there was a rich amount of music that was very popular that we enjoyed talking about and enjoyed listening to, and was worth that. This stuff ebbs and flows, right? I mean, I feel like you would agree with that general overall consensus. Like, are we rehashing 2008 Nas talking points or what?
Yeah, it ebbs and flows, and I feel like given the way music is disseminated now, I think you get a more steady stream of everything in general. And I think the baseline quality level is higher than it's ever been. And I think especially since COVID, there's just been a higher production rate in general because artists aren't on tour as much anymore for a variety of reasons. So there's just more, the income stream has to come from somewhere. And and so artists that generally would be out there getting their money from shows are getting it now from streaming or studio or other avenues. And sometimes they don't take the best routes that I respect the most in terms of, how they go about it. We'll get to that when we get to the last album we discuss. But anyway, so let's just rip the Band-Aid off, because speaking of the mainstream, speaking of stuff we don't normally really talk about on here, is, I guess, popular Billboard Top 40 country music. I mean, we talked about, the boy who said the slur.
Yeah. The boy who cried slur.
The boy who cried slur, then cried alcoholism, and then we got to skate on that one. Then he, didn't show up for a show, but he wasn't. He, bailed on a show because of alcoholism. But he got skate because he wasn't Frank Ocean, so it wasn't like a betrayal of his fans or anything.
No, absolutely not. Completely absolved. Yeah. But
at least he didn't make a song that I don't think even qualifies as a country song, by the way, because I actually found this is the first preparation for this show was the first time I actually listened to the thing in full, because I previously just heard about it. I'm like, this is dog shit. I looked at the lyrics. I'm like, this is dog shit. I listened to like 30 seconds of it. I'm like, this is reactionary dog shit. But I did my due diligence, and I not only listened to the song, I watched the video for Jason Aldean, Try That in a Small Town.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I watched the whole goddamn thing, screwed up my YouTube algorithm. And so the comment box is amazingly, you'll be surprised to hear this. The ROI on comment box for this did not last very long.
Wait, hold on, wait. You're serious? I would have never guessed.
Well, it's a male artist, so I mean, you think it would last a little longer.
Oh, that's true. Usually, you know, they allow discussion in the marketplace of ideas when it's under male artist page.
Normally, they get like a 30-day grace period as opposed to a woman doing a thing that's only like a weekend, and we'll get to that when we get to another album later. But so one of the things in the comment box during its mercifully brief period of existence was somebody saying, I don't know, you know, it's I don't know why people are getting their, you know, all twisted up about this because it's just, you know, a dumb song. Like, it's why are people crying dog whistles about it? Well, if you watch the video, the video itself literally has footage of black people doing crime.
That's true. That is objectively true. It does have that.
Butt Rock Peckerwood Cracker motherfucker is standing in front of a building with a flag down it saying, you know, don't cross that line. You'll be sorry. We look out after our own. That ain't a dog whistle. That's a fucking bullhorn.
Yeah. It's a very obvious. It's so obvious what it is appealing to. And, you know, we know, like, you and I are both very familiar with the literal people that it is trying to appeal to.
Not going to dox myself, but I live in an area where there are some small towns where they'd like very much like you to try that in.
Yes.
So, but the funny thing about it, heavy air quotes about it, is that this motherfucker does not live anywhere near a small town.
No.
Like, no, of course not. This is just cynical, craven fucking exploitation. Same type of shit that led to a bunch of yahoos storming a government building a few years ago. Might have heard about it. So
he's Nashville or Los Angeles, one of those two things, right? I imagine Nashville.
Probably has houses in both. Probably records has a house in the other.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even, again, unlike the other song we're going to talk about, that one's at least a country song by definition, a little bit. This one's not even a country song. This is just like fucking dumb butt rock. That's it. It's like there's nothing to it sonically. It's not interesting. It's just a series of racist dog whistles. Rocketed right the fuck up the charts.
Yeah. No, because of course it did. Number one.
I mean, and I'd like to say it's all astroturfing, and I'm sure there's absolutely astroturfing industry muscle behind it. Like, you want to use the term, incredibly overused term, industry plant. This is an industry plant right here. But it's also definitely resonating with people because you got to say that what's happening this summer that's scaring the shit out of people has to be like labor, you know, wants to be recognized and not treated like shit because for the past 3 years they've been exploited and run into the ground during a pandemic and now want to be fairly compensated and not work to literal death. So I feel like songs like this are supposedly and, you know, there have been race-based murders, and to distract the, you know, dumb slavering plebs from that, what do? You bait them, you race bait them. You take them, you otherize somebody and come up with shit like this. Easy, nationalistic bullshit. That's it. That's all this is. This is just the definition of reactionary. And I think that's probably even more apparent in the second song we're going to discuss, which apparently is not an industry plant because this dude came out and because I guess this song was trotted out at the Republican national debate, which I did not watch and have no desire to discuss. But I guess it was trotted out at the Republican first presidential debate, which is just a diminishing returns clown car thing from like 2016. We all know that the fucking 72 indictments, 72 counts fascist is going to win anyway. So why are we even going through with this grade? But it's going to come down to like the cosplay version of him versus him, and then he's just going to stomp him like he did Cruz because who the fuck cares? But anyway, so I guess they used the song in the debate, and then Oliver Anthony came out and said, "Hey man, I'm talking about y'all. Why are y'all using my song?" So I guess points for him for not necessarily being AstroTurf, but that doesn't make the song any less dog shit. So the other song we're going to talk about is Richmond, North of Richmond, which is also rocketed up the charts. And in theory, I guess, shout out to friend of the pod, previous guest, Too Broke to Care Christian, said that there is actually a class critique behind this song a little bit, at least in the first verse, which I guess you can argue. But I mean, first of all, the song sucks. It's just sub Mumford and Sons guy with a banjo that's not in tune in the video to what it sounds like, wailing terribly, atonally, whatever. And the first verse, I guess, is like, damn y'all politicians, which I guess can immediately be read to damn y'all Joe Biden, let's go Brandon type shit. But then the second, it's just like welfare shames people, fat shames people. And again, I don't even know if you can call them dog whistles when you're just yelling the shit, when you're saying the quiet part loud. And that's who it's appealing to. And either this dude is just walking it back so he doesn't get called out for the obvious, or he's too dumb to realize who his fan base is.
I mean, it might be the latter only because this is the fucking guy that was like, he came out, there was an interview and it was like, oh, he's like some centrist dude or whatever. Did you see that?
I didn't see, I mean, I saw that, I believe, that's what I was referring to. Oh, I didn't see the interview part. I just saw that he was reacting to the RNC thing. I did not see the interview.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. I forget. I just know he was asked, and then he had the quote, and everyone's like, oh, this guy's like just like a centrist dude.
I know that Horse in the Discord was talking about how he's like, yeah, just like a Facebook centrist type guy. So I guess best case scenario, what I said is that he's like Joyner Lucas type thing. Like, yay, we have he can sign to Shady and do songs with like Yellow Wolf and Joyner Lucas. Good. Again, he's shaming people on welfare. We don't need this shit. Song's terrible. Like, I don't think it's nearly as outwardly loathsome as Try That in a Small Town, which is openly glorifying sundown towns, openly glorifying lynching culture. And, you know, it's the same sort of shit. It's like going to get somebody killed. Like, that shit's playing out of, like, you know, fucking pickup trucks with the Confederate flag on it. Like, but it's
the small town song is actually incredible how hateful and mean it is.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I mentioned the Eat the Rich podcast again. I don't know if that's going to make the air or not, but one of the best ones on the Patreon that I had access to was their episode about the 9/11 anniversary, and that one they always close their Patreon with like a funny song at the end, found sound, whatever, and they close that one with courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, "The Angry American" by Toby Keith, which then that got reviewed by one of my friends showed up on the feed, so I gave a review of that because I had recently heard it, and it's a terrible song. It's a hateful song, but it is so cartoonish as to be funny. And maybe, again, it's 20 years of removed from having heard it that I can laugh at now. But, like, it's got, like, all these lines about put a boot in your ass, light you up like the 4th of July, and Lady Liberty's shaking her fist, and these eagles are coming down on you. It's a cartoon. Like, it's just, like, fucking so broadly drawn that it's primary colors, whereas this Jason Aldean shit really seems like documentary footage of, like, somebody being run down in a field. Like, it's so poker face and just, it seems like this type of reactionary music shit has gotten so much more serious and hateful. Like, not that song wasn't hateful, but it's, I don't know, maybe it's just because it's so much more recent, it feels close to home, but it feels more serious. I don't know.
No, I think that it is like pushing. That type of song is literally pushing past the boundary for, like, you might as well have made, like, a D.W. Griffith movie in, like, 2023. Like, that's...
And at least you can argue, you know, Mussolini made the trains run on time, the Nazis had real nice architecture. At least D.W. Griffith cinematography, right? Like, all these songs sounds like garbage. Like,
the American fascist empire doesn't even have good art.
No, they don't. They don't have good comics. Like, who do they have? Fucking Adam Carolla, Dennis Miller. Like, you know, they never have fucking good art, period. Because these motherfuckers have no imagination. All they have is hate.
And they're anti-art, just like in principle in a lot of cases. Right.
Like, yeah, at least they used to want to buy prestige, buy some sort of intellectualism. Again, Lenny Riefenstahl, all that shit. But no, they don't even care about that anymore. So the bar that was already under the earth is further under. So
yeah,
that shit. Fuck Jason Aldean. I don't necessarily want to say fuck Oliver Anthony because, again, I think this dude is like a dumb mark. And I feel like there's a certain different danger in couching legitimate class critiques in that type of shit, because I think that's partially what led to the rise of Trump is that he would say the one right thing amidst 20 wrong, fascist, hateful things, is he would have that. Like, because that's how fascism works, is you get the populist. The populism is like you take a legitimate critique about people's like grievances about their state of like life in capitalism, and then you pervert that, right? That's why people drew the Trump Bernie parallel. That was, not
Oh, sure, yeah. The most accurate parallel in the history of American politics right there.
So popular. Yeah. It's like they're outsiders. They're essentially the same. They're criticized. Yes, that noted anti-capitalist Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when I pass Trump Tower, I actually salute the. It's basically it's basically like what I seeing Stalin's living quarters back in the day. I mean, same thing.
What is the art of the deal but the Little Red Book, the revive?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's actually Celebrity Apprentice.
But yeah, so I feel like when you see something like the Richmond, north of Richmond, and it's like it starts off by criticizing, why do I have to work so hard? While these people like him of the big wheel or whatever, one man struggles, one other relaxes. Like it's like, yeah, why am I working 60 hours and barely supporting my family? Like, gets you thinking about the system, but then it's like, but that motherfucker's on welfare. It's their fault. Like eventually pointing the finger at your comrade, not at the actual rich man north of Richmond. Like he's wrong.
There is a history, a long history of various different, memes and whatnot, where it's like conservative does a thing or tweets about a thing or does a video on a thing, and then you're just like, oh my God, they're so close to actually getting it, but then they don't put two and two together. It just goes back to the same old shit that they regurgitate. So.
God damn it, I have the best transition to wanting to talk about something we're going to talk about in our best stuff, and you know what I want to get to, but I'm not, I can't, that's breaking the structure, because we still got to go to disappointments now. You know what I want to fucking talk about, but I can't get there yet, about blaming the same old shit. But
oh, yeah, well, I mean...
We could still talk about them. We can talk about Utopia.
We can. Yes, we can talk about Utopia. Let's do it, because this perfectly, I think, goes into something we're about to talk about soon, which is just, the annoying discourse around hip-hop's 50th birthday or year, all that stuff. So something like Utopia, I think, perfectly encapsulates the thing that a lot of, like, the people want, where they want an event album like it's 2016 again, but the event album is like a stale, retread / just like not even a sequel. Like we're on like the 4th or 5th installment in the franchise, and now or like the 8th installment, and it's like gotten, it's just it's predictably down the middle. You know what you're getting. That is what we've arrived at with Utopia. I wish it was interesting. I wish I liked it. I really do. But I knew I wasn't going to, which is a rare negative mindset, I think, for me going into an album, especially from an artist that I've been on record on this podcast as albums that I liked in the past and albums that used to mean something to me, like, about like 6, years ago or some shit like that. So even less. So it's like, I went into it being like, okay, I'll get like a few songs, and then, I probably won't like most of this. But who knows? Maybe, I saw some hype for it. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. It happens many times before. And the first song, people really like the first song. Like that's the one thing I heard commonality. People like the first song. I listened to it and I was like, y'all like this? Like, it's fine. It's okay. But like, you guys are standing for this? Okay, all right. Next song. I just went through, and most of the album failed to leave any discernible impression on me, and that was also the case for the subsequent listens, outside of a handful of songs, and and most of those songs came toward like the back half. So I don't know what your thoughts are. I literally don't know what your thoughts are, actually.
Well, my thoughts are brief because I've only heard it once in full, and that was because at my job it got played on the stereo system at the end of a very long shift. So I've only heard it once in full, and because I was avoiding listening to it because the buzz around it was bad. Longtime listeners of the pod will know I had a complicated relationship with Travis's podcast, longtime readers of my RYM, that I read a podcast, Travis's discography, and that I was very negative on him at first, came around, and then, but then I just kind of lost my desire to listen to him. Obviously, real life events made it kind of difficult to, really defend him as an artist after the tragedy of Astroworld. Not the album, the festival, obviously. Quite fond of the album. I'll actually defend that more than certain people will. But as far as this album goes, well, first of all, you said people want event albums like it's 2016. Judging by the research done by certain fans that was compiled up at Nobel's, I believe, like
yes.
Some of these albums, this is an event album like it's from 2016 because some of these songs date back to 2016 and even farther.
Yeah.
Because most of this album was intended for other artists, and it sounds like it. Like, it really does sound like he basically went around and grabbed Mike Dean and, to a lesser extent, Kanye's leftovers and slapped his vocals on them. It really truly does sound like that. And I think the only song that was not intended for anyone else was Meltdown. And goddamn, does that song's an embarrassment.
Yeah, it's a terrible song.
It's one of the worst.
It's the worst song. It's the worst song on the album.
The second worst feature of the year, and we'll get to the worst feature of the year very shortly. I have these transitions that I can't go on because I'm trying to adhere to the structure here. Is, God damn it, fucking Drake, just how desperate is this man? Like, clearly he can't finish he's desperate to finish his album to pay his fucking gambling debts before football season starts.
Hey, we're right here, man. We're so close. He better be up on it.
Yeah, he's definitely getting his fantasy league together for sure. And he's already fucking missed one release date. But he's so desperate to get Buzz going that he will not stop trying to reignite this fucking Pusha beef, and it's not happening. This dog shit verse, just dog shit, worse than Duppy Freestyle, worse than I'm Upset. Well, Duppy Freestyle's actually good. So yeah, Duppy Freestyle's
you meant worse than I'm Upset. I know what you meant.
Upset, yeah. Worse than like the stray one or two bars on Scorpion that were like anything that he's done aside from I'm Upset about Pusha. Just like, and why is he dragging Pharrell into it? I don't know. Why is he like the tasteless invocations of Virgil, and Travis is a non-entity on that. Travis is a non-entity on all of this. Somebody compared it, I think, to a Khaled album, which was also a criticism leveled at Donda, which I don't think you could ever say about Donda, because like it or hate it, and I can understand the arguments for hating Donda, Kanye is always going to be an artist that resonates more than the Rolodex you get on a Khaled album. Whereas I don't think Travis, one way or another, moves the needle as a vocalist on this album, at least. He's really, truly not present.
I mean, it is really like close to a Khaled album in terms of the construction, the video. There are very few times when it feels like he's actually in command of the music, which at least you could argue that being the case on his every previous Travis project, good or bad songs. He had the curator role, but the control was all his. This just feels like, how do I even explain it? Because everyone's already done he made a rehash of 2013 Kanye, which he did. But I'm trying to find a new angle where it's just like, I think that the fact that this was the long-awaited album after 5 years and everything that happened, and this was the record, it just sounds like worse versions of your previous records. Way less interesting choices were taken. The songwriting isn't there. The hooks aren't there. I mean, and it was 80 fucking minutes or something for what purpose? I don't really understand. And you can put songs on in isolation and they can sound fine. I will definitely give you that. There are songs on here. I think My Eyes is actually a pretty good song. I thought the Cardi song was interesting because, whatever he did. I thought that the West Side song, which takes a lot for me to say something nice about West Side these days, I thought that was good. The SZA song I thought was good too. So you can put songs on in isolation, but then it's like you listen to the 21 song, it's like, oh, I feel nothing. And you can listen to the Drake song, it's like, I feel nothing, and his verses, goofy, whatever. The Tizo Touchdown song, I mean, I don't like Tizo Touchdown at all, so that doesn't surprise me. I don't like that song. And by the way, I misspoke when I said the Drake song was one of the worst on the album. It's not because that fucking K-pop song is atrocious. Toward the end, with The Weeknd and Bad Bunny, which was obviously, everybody said, was like designed in a lab to try to astroturf and artificially engineer your way to a number one hit. That was what it was. So it's like, as someone who has been extraordinarily, I think, very charitable and also just like, for the most part, just real about how I felt about Travis's music, like throughout the years on this pod, me, being a defender, a supporter, and someone that was like, yeah, I like Travis. And, Rodeo meant a lot to me. It's like, well, what exactly are we doing here that even remotely approaches previous work? The Young Thug song, I get it. Also, we talk about event albums like it's 2016. The Young Thug song isn't going to be as good because it's not 2016 Young Thug. I get it. The Weeknd song is like, the Weeknd's in a little different place now. I understand that. The Beyonce song, I don't really know actually what was happening with that. I don't remember too much of it, so I don't want to speak out of turn there. But even the intro and the second track, those just sound like we have stopped trying to be God at home. Like that type of thing. Where it's just like, okay, so you already kind of tried your hand at this before, and now you're just you're widening your scope in terms of like, I'm gonna open more of like the quote unquote, I'm using heavy air quotes, experimental bag and stuff like in the production. So I don't know. I wish I heard what a lot of people heard when they said they found the production like innovative and interesting or whatever. Because I've seen that, whether it's on the website, Twitter, what have you. The production has gotten praise. I've seen plenty of that. But to me, I'm just like, why am I bored then?
I mean, it's fine. Like, again, it's fine. I have it as a 6. I stand by the 6.
Yeah,
I don't anything. K-pop's bad. I agree. And also, like, yeah, very much cynically constructed from the title on down, title features on down, like increase your SEO, here's how type thing.
Yeah.
Beyond that, K-pop and Meltdown actively bad.
Yeah.
I have nothing against the Tizo song. I left no impression on me. But I think that K-pop is especially bad because I feel like the closest this album comes to leaving an impression on me is from the Thug song onward is a good run, except for K-pop. So that really does break the momentum.
Yeah, I do agree about that. Where there's that run, and then even the song after, because the SZA song is right after, which I thought was good.
Fuck him for putting Chappelle on the album. Fuck you. Stop. We said this on the mid-year. Stop Chappelle. Like, I'm real sick of that shit.
You guys know how we feel at this point.
Yeah,
like,
we went on that on the mid-year. No need to really belabor the point, especially because you got Lean on it. Like, that would have been kind of a cool look for Lean, but then it's just spoiled by putting that guy on there. I don't know. It's just very hollow. Like, I appreciate the production, I think, maybe more than you, although it's, again, it's just hollow because it's like there's no new ideas here. Like, it feels hollow-ish in the sort of way that, like, ASAP Rocky production did.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Like,
yeah.
At long last, ASAP and testing, but like he was doing that like almost a decade ago, and I would say arguably that had more chances than this because again he's just cherry picking experimental, heavy air quotes yet again, from Yeezus through to Donda, like Mike Dean's experimental ideas that aren't even half as experimental as the ideas that Mike Dean was giving on his own fucking solo projects. Like, yeah, it just feels like he realized he was gone for a long time and maybe something was due contractually, or maybe enough time had happened since the Crowd Crush tragedy that people were going to forget and he could put something out. It feels cynical. It feels hollow. He, as a main artist, has never felt less present to me. And it feels all very reliant on the features. I feel like in terms of if you wanted to prune quality out of this, you certainly could prune a 7 out of 10 40-minute album, but that's the ceiling for this. There's just not that much here. I feel like you have to do some serious mental stand gymnastics to get a classic out of this. And I feel like certain people are, once again, sorry, Christian. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think because, and this is not even, I'm not even we like Christian on the show. He's been on the show many times. I'm not dunking on his review, but I'm going to bounce off your point.
In front of me, and he was, like, again, our guest on the Travis podcast. So I'm really feel like I'm not trying to kick him on this one.
No. I actually found his review interesting. I read the whole thing.
His review was interesting.
Yeah, it's not. It's more about.
Please check his Medium. He's doing a lot of great work lately. So I'm not trying to kick him on this because I feel like he makes probably the most compelling argument for the album, but I don't agree with it.
100%. I wanted to hear because, you know, he and I have agreed on Travis in the past. He talked about how he thought that outside of a handful of songs, the structures and the sounds are like, you know, like kind of like a mind fuck. And I'm like, I want to know, like, is that really the case? Like, I feel like I would have to talk myself into some of the record being interesting because it doesn't move me at the end of the day, where it's like I obviously know that it is going for it is attempting a lot. I understand that, but I would like to at least feel something where I feel like let's say you didn't like the previous Travis records, hypothetically, you would probably, those albums, like, stylistically, they really went for it, and I'm just not sure this one is going for it as much as its fans are making it sound like. But
right.
I guess it's a dumb thing to, you know, split hairs over, but that's just kind of my own thought.
No, I think that's a good way to put it because I feel like it makes overtures towards, it gives the outward superficial appearance of being experimental without actually experimenting. Like, right. It invokes a lot of experimental reference points without actually being that exciting. But again, it's not bad. We're not certainly, it's in the disappointments bucket, not the worst of bucket by any means. Like, I feel like Travis is a good enough craftsman. Mike Dean certainly is, that there's going to be a baseline level of quality. Yeah. But you remember my Birds in the Trap Sing McKnight review, which again, I upped that from a 4 to a 6 about, like, you know, being at a restaurant and everything looks great.
Yeah, the dinner and then,
right. I think that applies more to this than that. Except I don't think as many people are coming away from this dinner quite as satisfied. They're talking themselves into being satisfied. Like, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. I agree with you on it. I think it is a down the middle, like, you know, maybe a 6 out of 10 if I'm being generous type of thing. So yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I would definitely file it under disappointments because, you know, it was. But I think it is very indicative. The conversation around it, I think, is very indicative in between the gulf of your average, like, you know, I check like a dozen albums a year guy versus people like us who are, like, you know, really about this. And I don't mean it from a we're better type thing. I would never say that. I just mean in terms of there's a clear conversation gulf between those two sides right now. And I think the people that are more towards the former are driving a lot of this negative conversation instead of the latter, obviously.
Right. And which brings us to something I know you wanted to kind of talk about a bit, which is the happy 50th birthday hip hop. Why are you disappointing me so hard?
Right.
So yeah. I have not read any of these think pieces. I know Aaron linked me one or two, friend of the show, previous guest Aaron, shout out Horns. But so would you like to kind of broach this real quick, and I'll probably just agree with everything you said. I haven't read it.
Well, I think it's the larger conversation maybe versus individual think pieces. There was one that I read this week that I found interesting, but ultimately not very productive, where the author was talking about how, you know, rap music is basically in 2023 is, you know, just basically a vessel for, like, you know, hyper-capitalist, like, ideals, and it's closer to like, you know, billionaire worship than, like, actual, you know, you know, how do I phrase this? Actual thoughtful commentary and community and things of that nature. It's like, well, that's kind of, like, always been hip hop for at least a while, right? Like, I don't think that is, like, a general, I don't think that's a new development. You know, it's just, we have, like, you know, we're in the age of, like, the most wealth inequality in the history of the world. So, like, yeah, that's gonna be, like, prevalent in some cases in the music. Like, You know, like Jay-Z exists. I understand that, but that's not gonna like tell me something I don't know. Is also kind of what I was getting at a little with that take. But I think more the thing that frustrates me more than think pieces, because I do think those are worth their discussion. Like I don't know any more than the next guy. You know, where I'm just a huge fan of rap music. Like I can't say that I've been involved in rap for most of its lifespan as a popular music genre. I just love it dearly. So I respect people that have covered it and have been a part of rap for a while, speaking out on stuff like that. Like that's valid. But my general whole thing is like the concept of it started earlier in the year when it was like this is the first year, and I forget how many, but it has been a very long time in the 21st century at least, that rap music hasn't had a song hit #1 overall on the Billboard charts. So like any rap song hit #1. This was months ago. I don't know if that's since changed. Maybe that very popular Gunna song hit it. I don't know. But that was like dominating on a conversation. Oh, rap doesn't have superstars, like outside of some of the old guard to like sell out arenas. Who's the next great superstar? Is rap dying as a popular like art form in terms of at the top of the mainstream? Country music has taken over the charts this year. There's been a lot of also like Latin music that's been dominating the charts. So rap in terms of like hyper popularity has been getting its ass kicked this year in relation to what it used to do, in years past. And so that inspired a lot of like pearl clutching I feel about the subject. And like I just feel like it goes without saying that rap isn't going anywhere. Like as a popular art form, I actually think it informs all of the other genres of music. I don't know what you think, but I actually think it so clearly in the 2000s, 2010s, and beyond has informed all other popular genres of music that get the traction. Country is informed by rap. You know how many country songs have like heavy air quotes here trap beats like underneath them as like to propel the beat forward, or how much pop music is inspired by like rap music where the pop artist is like sing rapping. That happens all the time. Obviously,
the Slur guy had a Lil Durk on his album, right?
Yes, he did. 100%. It was a big song too. So this happens, and obviously electronic music and rap have been synonymous. Like we have a relationship with each other for decades. So that goes without saying. So it's like even if rap doesn't have that song or these couple of songs that everybody knows and everybody likes, and you can play them at parties or whatever, I don't know. But rap music is still informing the entire music industry.
Right, and I would say that first of all, Billboard is a faulty at best metric to judge everything by.
Yes.
Like it's legacy media. Like what was the big Billboard hit of the summer? Try that in a small town. So you can astroturf very easily. To bassist instincts very easily. That's very easy. And I would say that also hip hop not being heavily featured, like has rap ever truly dominated the charts with the exception of a period in the early 2000s? And always once hip hop dominates, I would say that the industry retaliates. Like one of the things that's always fascinated me is that with the rise of hip hop in the 90s and that 2000s period, there was that reaction of nu metal. Wyatt's going to hate me for saying this, but I think that nu metal being pushed so heavily was the industry reacting by white audiences wanting to reclaim and have something of their own to like own that sound. And then you would, of course, have like post 9/11, the patriotism wave of, Toby Keith, angry American type shit. God bless our, brave soldiers in my Chevy type shit. And that, so there's always, so yeah, I think Billboard's up. And then now recently, I think that's also a reflection of that, like I said before, music dissemination has changed. So Billboard's not the only metric. You have streaming. People are absorbing music a lot differently, consuming it a lot differently.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Billboard is not accounting for so many different avenues. People are consuming so much music through like shortened versions of the songs on TikTok, and then they go look up the actual song. Like that happens. It's just a lot different now than like Clear Channel stuff,
And when hip hop breaks out of its box, it scares the shit out of people. Lil Nas X, Old Town Road, scared the ever loving shit out of the industry to the point where they had to change rules to keep it from winning.
Yeah, and that song was the most popular song in the last 5 years.
because it wasn't supposed to be where it was.
Right.
For as
You
long
also think about this. When the last time rap music, well, I don't know if this is true actually, but the time I distinctly remember, rap had a 1 and a 2 on Billboard back to back. This is early 2017, and it was a wonderful time because number 1 was Bad and Bougie, the Migos classic, obviously, and number 2 was what was it? It was the Ray Shremmerd song with Black Beatles with Gucci.
Oh, was it Black Beatles? Not Black Beatles.
It was Black Beatles, yeah. It was Ray Shremmerd, Black Beatles, but with the Gucci feature, yeah. Those 2 songs were 1 and 2 on the charts. And when that happened, they were there for a while, a long time. They were very popular songs, huge. The industry reacted by, okay, now we have to throw these guys on songs, all these pop artists or whatever, get them to, like, here, Katy Perry, here's Migos, like, here, like, whatever, like, here, Ray Shremmerd, go on this pop artist. So it's like, the industry never knows what to do with rap music, other than to let it be, which they can't do that because they meddle in everything, and then, they shortchange rappers and give them shitty contracts and et cetera, et cetera. We know how, fucking parasitic the music industry is, especially the major label system. So, to me, it's like, okay, fuck them anyway, right?
Oh, yeah, it's not a sign of the industry of rap, the genre dying. It's a sign of the genre persevering, and I would say even thriving, given the level of quality that artists are producing outside of that structure. Fuck that structure. Fuck Billboard. Right. Like, a song that's actually always in and out of my head, and I would maintain is probably the best Jay-Z post-retirement verse is What's Free with Rick Ross. Yeah. Where he's like, we used to look at Billboard, but we was young. Now we look at Billboard like, is you dumb? Don't need a billion streams, got $1 billion. Like, yeah, right on that one. Like, again, you made the point, Jay-Z's always been around hyper-capitalist. Yes, but often right about stuff. And he had to say he's right on that one. So
100%. Yeah.
Real quick, is when did hip-hop was born through the Reagan era? Like the most capitalist era. So hip-hop's always had the element of capitalism. Although I would say it's never been more open to and broadcasting of anti-capitalist messages, as we'll get to shortly with one of these.
Right, and that's the thing. That's another thing, is that there are 2 sides to everything, and that is what we're seeing now. And also, that conversation about rap embracing capitalism or whatever. Well, it's a very complicated conversation. One I surely have no business having, but it's more of just like the general circumstances begetting your world outlook and then kind of like inverting that. And so obviously when the majority of rappers that become popular, they, credibly, grow up in dire circumstances as a result of their own country basically spitting at them and their communities in the face. There's like the fact that you're able to make it out of that and survive and persevere and have the opportunity to have a good life, well, that can't be celebrated. So now there's that aspect of it that I would definitely hear the argument for as well. Morality, there's a lot of gray around it. You tell me if I'm off base with any of that. These are just things that I've thinking about in relation to the whole discourse and whatnot.
And I would say that one of the best albums I've heard recently that embraces all sides of that argument, and in not shades of black and white, but shades of gray, with one very, very glaring exception, will be the first, I think, of the best albums we want to talk about, will be Noname Sundial.
Yeah. No, hey, great, phenomenal transition as we're back.
Well, I've made like 3 or 4 allusions to this album already.
Sure. There's a lot to talk about with this one.
Yeah, there is a whole lot to talk about. I think, first of all, that this is the album the Killer Mike album thinks it is.
Oh, no question. Especially because it's an actually like daring album.
Yes, it actually is an album that doesn't give a fuck what you think, for better and for worse, and is all coming from a not that Mike isn't coming from a marginalized place, and I'm certainly not the arbiter of who is and isn't coming from a marginalized place, but I think that Noname, being a black woman who is speaking openly socialist messages, is a lot more dangerous to the status quo than Mike being a landlord flexing and telling you to pay him rent.
Yeah, I would say, like, inarguably so. Yeah.
Now, let's just address the elephant in the room, though. Fuck Jay Electronica.
Seriously. I
Because
mean,
the big, real problem with that verse is that it, by its existence, it sucks up all the air in the room and demands that it be the first thing you have to talk about. Because what's the first thing I'm talking about? Is the fucking Jay Electronica verse. What is the first thing she gets asked about in any interview? The Jay Electronica
the Jay Electronica verse, yeah.
What is the thing that she is, like, the whole press has been about this verse. There's so much to talk about on this album, sonically, lyrically, thematically. But this motherfucker's out there talking about Zelensky plotting with rabbis and Farrakhan sent him. And shut the fuck up, dude. You've been making the same goddamn verse for 10 years. In 10 years, you've had like 3 good feature verses. Fucking retire. But you want to talk about holding on to the past? The past is that people pay Jay Electronica however much money to come on their album expecting Exhibit C. You're not getting Exhibit C anymore. You're getting this tired-ass bullshit with the same flow, the same shit about Yakub and Farrakhan, and shut the fuck up. We have Killer Priest. We don't need Killer Priest at home.
Real. That was the best thing anyone's ever said about the album. We have Killer Priest at home. We had this conversation, I think, I want to say in 2020, in the realm of after the written testimony dropped. And I think both of us were too nice to that album then, but we still gave it to, like, Jay Electronica in the sense of his performance on it. But we were still too nice. I'm sure we were. But
yeah, I'm reacting on that. Way too nice to that. The best thing I can say about that is it makes me appreciate Jay-Z, later period Jay-Z more, because he definitely gave that a little too much juice.
Yeah, he was great on it. He makes it a listenable album.
But I think the other thing about the Jay verse is that I can honestly see why Noname picked him aside from, because what Noname's doing on this album is she's making a modern sort of, and she says, like, on the very first verse, she has the line about falling in and out of consciousness like the rappers do. And what she's making is like a modern Soulquarians type conscious album, but not like the sort of Liberation 2 or Melt My Eyes, See Your Future thing where it's like an openly like imitative sort of stale throwback. It's a real modern revision of that, because what she's talking about is contemporary. She's doing it in a very fresh sort of way. It doesn't feel whatsoever stale. And so you have things like, you have Jay there to throw back to like that 2010s period. You have Common at the end. And the Common verse is much better. I mean, it's Common, so it's very like, it's skirting the edge of corniness, but I like it. I like that as the note it ends on. Like, it's certainly not the best feature on the album, because you have Billy Woods and Silk Money right there before. And by the way, Silk Money's verse, he's talking about killing crackers with Kalashnikovs. He's no less inflammatory than Jay Electronica is. But it's a fucking dope verse.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference there. And I don't think I should explain what that difference is. I mean, first of all, if you're familiar with Silk Money's, work, it's very much in line with it. Kind of sort of like Jay Electronica asking the Jewish question over and over is in line with Jay Electronica.
Yeah, I don't have much more to say. I mean, Patrick bodied this whole topic, but I mean, I will say that
Been sitting on my mind for a minute. But yeah, just to real quick thread it around, as I see what Noname was looking for there, and I feel like you both get what you pay for, and unfortunately, if it's not necessarily what serves the album, it's your album, and you kind of have to stand behind it. And I feel like Noname has a really toxic relationship with the internet, like always has, and that it's a disappointment, because even that song is good. And thankfully, shout out to Garden of Delete, Kessia Duma. She made an edit of this without Jay Electronica on it that I can now put in my car. So that's great, because he's tucked into the end of the song. So that song's great until he shows up. And the thing about that verse that's so, like, it's all about pro-black themes, but it's just so fucking black and white. This album is not black and white. Like, she talks about self-doubt. She talks about her community. She talks about all these issues in nuanced ways. And that verse is completely without nuance. It's just dumb fucking, tell him Farrakhan sent you. Yeah, we can tell.
I mean, it was people like taking screenshots and putting them on Twitter and being like, "This sucks," da, 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 da. And then I saw cool tweets like, "This is actually a good verse." Like, what are you guys talking about? I'm like, no, it's not. It's rare I say this, but I agree with Twitter. It's not a good verse. It doesn't even sound good.
Because you've been using the same flow for 10
years, and it's like, oh god, wow, make the Rothschild joke one more time. I can't wait. I'm waiting on it. I'm checking my watch. It's like, it doesn't. Jay Electronica, and this is a great time for me as someone who has always thought Jay Electronica was like grossly overrated. So now this is like my time to step into the spotlight and be like, hey, I know this guy used to be good. Great, I got that. I'm with it. Has he been good in like a decade? No. And there's still all this faith that when he drops his albums, they're going to be good. Even that second album in 2020, I wasn't really that big of a fan of. So it's just, I haven't remembered anything he's done outside of this shit since, I don't know, what is it, Act 1? Yeah, Act 2, excuse me, yeah. Yeah, so I just, hearing that was not a surprise, unfortunately. I will say, hilarious moment in the server when I posted that screenshot about how, like, about Jay Elec, and, like, his, there was a tweet that I saw, which I'm now going to try to find it, and this is terrible radio, but, oh no, I gotta find it, because people, how he was like, how Noname, he just got called out for anti-Semitism previously, and Noname had him on the album, and you're like, oh, okay, like, that's, like, he's gonna go back on that, like, he's not gonna, like, bring it up again, they'll just get a normal J-like verse, and then the whole verse is just that.
But
you want to talk about things that we did like?
Yes, everything else. I feel like, again, the comparison to the Mike album is because Mike's production was praised heavily, and I liked the production on the Mike album, but it felt hollow. This feels like a full realization of, like, that gospel sound Mike was going for in his album. Granted, the Mike album skews a lot more southern than this does. This is definitely a lot more, again, Soulquarians type style. Mm-hmm. I believe Aaron Allen Kane, who's on Balloons, the JLX song, was also on the Mike album. So I feel like every song has a concrete theme that she explores in an interesting way with a flow that's more animated than in the past. She's still her flow always reminded me a little bit of I feel like her original songs, she had this like kind of deadpan super in the pocket flow that reminded me of Milo, and now this kind of feels like when Milo evolved into Rap Ferrara. Like, it's more animated, and she's definitely kind of following Milo's path, Rap Ferrara's path, into exploring more broad themes of, like, Black community, Black consciousness. She has a track on here called Afrofuturism. I feel like that comparison holds. I might be pulling that out of my ass. I love the hooks on here. The Hold Me Down hook is amazing. Hold me down, hold me down, hold me down. Like, I feel like she does a really good job of this very vivid, colorful instrumentals juxtaposed with very thoughtful verses. Billy Woods on Gospel, feature of the year. Yeah. And I feel like, I hate to keep coming back to the fucking JLX verse, but Billy Woods on Gospel just illustrates how hollow that JLX verse is, how he's just saying the same old shit over and over, and then you have the best rapper alive.
An actually good rapper.
And saying, like, again, like, talking about themes of imperialism, very personal stuff, and it just exposes how goddamn hollow JLX saying the same shit for 10 years is. If you remember when we did the Black Star episode, not the Black Star episode, it was the episode I did with GOZ about, we talked about the Black Star album. Was it the Black Thought episode?
Yes, the Black Thought, yeah.
The Black Thought episode about cheat codes. And the Pitchfork article talking about the Black Star album having the same conversation. And we disagreed with that. And I feel like the Black Star album's kind of sort of half, like I said, that like the Denzel album and the Quali Madlib Liberation 2 are sort of like stale throwbacks to the Soulquarians era. And I feel like this is a full revision. Like the Black Star one is kind of halfway there, I guess, or mostly there. And I feel like this is like a full realization. Like it's the sort of sound completely and fully and thrillingly revised, both thematically and sonically. Just everything about it feels so alive in terms of production, in terms of just lyricism, delivery, everything. I don't know if it's my favorite work of hers. Obviously, the JLX verse being there is a sore thumb, but it's at the end. You can edit it out. And I honestly, while I don't think her response in the media, again, it's not my place to litigate that, but I feel like it's does the album a disservice in the same.
I 100% agree.
In the same sort of way, albeit contextually completely different than the way Yachty's response to his album does that album a disservice because it takes away from the sonic content.
Right. There was no need, I think, in my opinion, for her to... I wouldn't have responded, personally. It's not
merits. If you really stand behind it, let it stand on some merits or lack.
Yeah, it's not her verse. Sure, it's on the record. She knew it was going to be on the record, but it's not her verse. She doesn't have to answer for the words of somebody else, in my opinion. And I don't think that, by the way, this is not a situation of, oh my God, she's platforming Jay Electronica. Jay Electronica has had a platform for 15 years. So that's not a thing. He's chosen not to really use it. And when he's used it, he's chosen to often say dumb shit. Or sometimes say dumb shit. So it's like, I don't think that's the issue. Like, oh, she has to say something because I don't think she had to say anything. I actually think that, like you said, she did her a grave disservice by responding to that because it just sounded unnecessarily defensive. You didn't need to do that because you're answering for somebody else's words. And it also sounded like when she ended it with, like, I don't give a fuck what, like, any of you think, like, bye, basically. It's like, okay, well, you could convey that message a lot better if you didn't put out the Notes app, like, apology shit or whatever. Like, the Notes app response. You could have just said nothing, moved on, did your tour, let your work on your album stand for yourself.
Yeah, I think Force made an excellent point when he said if he put this verse out on fucking Donda 3 or whatever, she ain't going to defend it like that.
Right. It just, yeah, exactly. Because it's on her project and she's indirectly getting heat for the verse.
Because that makes it seem like on some level she knows she has to defend it. Whereas if she doesn't say shit, then like she should be she should be discussing what she said on her album, not what this dumb asshole decided to do with his 16 bars.
100%. 100%. Yeah. In conclusion, not worth.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I feel like we spent more time talking about him than the album, which is why that's ultimately why that verse is so goddamn annoying, because it shouldn't be there. It eats up all the space in the room. But
one thing that Noname, I think, has always done well, and she did it earlier, and I think she's especially done it now, is the fixate or the willingness to look inwardly and be critical of herself and call and do things such as basically calling herself a hypocrite, like on this album, as it relates to a myriad of different topics, and being critical in a way that isn't like disparaging, but is honest. I thought that was very interesting about this album, and I thought that it was well written in that regard. I think, unlike you, I think it is clearly her third best record. I prefer Telephone significantly, and then I think maybe it could fight Room 25. I haven't listened to Room 25 in years, so that could just be my own. Like, Room 25 might be better, and I just haven't listened to it, but I think Telephone is still her best, or I'll say this, Telephone is still my favorite of hers in the sense that I find it compulsively very listenable, even today, and even with the heavy stuff that she talked about on there, I find that album absolutely beautiful and very pretty. So, yeah, I still spin it every so often.
I would agree with you that Telephone's her best. The reason I said that I think it might be like in contention for her best is I just love the way her delivery's evolved on here, and I think that the concision of it and just the real brightness of the production is just the real beautiful evolution of her sound, and also things like the Woods feature, and I just think it's constructed very well. Speaking to your point about her addressing her contradictions in her music. I forget which song it is. I think it's either Boom Boom or potentially the interlude. Because she has very powerful socialist messages on here, but then she has some bar like, sharing my wealth, nah, that's not for me or something. And she like kind of addresses that she likes to buy stuff for herself. Like she'll just do that. She'll have like throwaway lines where she's like,
right,
all for the concept, but in practice, I'm not about this. Like she can recognize something, but she'll just like have a throwaway bar. And then she ends it on such a strong brag rap verse about how awesome she is, like a real self-positive verse right after Gospel, which is the most intense song on the album about like, fucking black militancy and the experience about like experience of in Africa with like those Silk Money and Billy verses too, where it's just like not juxtaposition, that's not the right word for it, but it just feels like that is such a thematically strong way to end the album by like just powerful self-identity and really fucking, and I don't remember Afrofuturism enough to go into that thematically, unfortunately, with like lyrical quotes. But I feel like that there's like a real strong suite of songs to get across the overarching themes of the album. But she had nuances upon that in every single song too. Like, but it's not black and white. That's what's so compelling about it. And I swear I'm not trying to make like a fucking play on words by saying black and white over and over. But it's like she's absolutely very compelling in the way. And the thing about it is, this is not like I do keep kicking Liberation too, and I will keep kicking that one. That's not like Christian in the Utopia thing where I'm not trying to kick something over. I will keep kicking Liberation too, because that's not a very good album. But I feel like Kweli has a very like, this is the right way, this is the wrong way, and I'm going to lecture at you way of rapping when he does this.
Right.
Which is why the Black Star album was so good, is I think that he made a conscious effort to not, no pun intended, conscious effort to be a little more nuanced in his way of rapping. That's why her updating that Soulquarian's approach is so refreshing on here, is because she's able to explore all sides of an issue in a way that's rapping that doesn't feel like you're being lectured at, period. Like, because she has such a melodic, appealing flow, and she marries it to such colorful, beautiful instrumentals with great hooks. Almost everything on here has a great hook, if it has a hook.
Yeah, she's always been a good writer. It's been evident since the first time I listened to her music. So definitely, like, that is still present here, and I think she offers a very unique voice in the sea of not mainstream, but mainstream adjacent hip hop that she kind of occupies. So yeah, I mean, I think that overall, like, very good album. We've talked about the negatives for sure.
The one negative.
Yeah, the one negative. I think I'm like a smidge lower on it than you are, but it is just that. It is just a smidge. I'm not taking much away from it overall as a project. I quite liked it. So,
I guess 2 negatives. I don't know. Well, maybe 1.5 negatives. I get what she's going for with the cover art. Again, shout out to Aaron. He really hates this cover art. He's like, it's AI generated, which apparently it's not. It's just the style of the artist. I get what she's going for on the cover art. It's not my favorite cover art. Like, it does reflect, again, themes of the album, but I'm not super into the cover art either. So, but it fits the album, fits what she's going for. So, all right.
Yeah, I would say I'm like it didn't leave one impression or another on me. I'll say I haven't thought about it too much.
I mean, I just saw the cover art as I was flicking away.
No. It's worth talking about.
Anyway, so do you want to move on to Veeze or Carly?
Let's do Carly. Why not? Let's talk about this greatness that dropped. About like
such a fucking album, dude. Like, I can't even like.
I mean, this is basically like this was like Christmas for us when this dropped. I mean, this was like, for the long time listeners of the podcast, I'm talking 5-6 years. Like, you understand what a special moment this was. And before we even get into anything, collage, top 10 Carly.
I mean, Carly. I feel like there's multiple songs you can make on here as arguments for, well.
No, you're right. You're 100% right, which is a testament.
Psychedelic Switch, top 20, maybe top 10, depending on the day. I honestly think Anything to Be With You is getting way too much shit for the hook. Oh, not even the hook. Okay, well, think about Anything to Be With You is what part's the Never Over part, I guess, is contentious with some people. Shout out to Bonafide. For some reason, he doesn't like most things, and he also doesn't like that. But I guess it's also catching shit in the comment box. I guess I can see that because it's like, it's the first thing she says on it. But I think like on the album and it's off-putting to people, but I think that's very important because one of the points I really wanted to make about the album is that this is the first companion album she's done that's not a side B. And I think that's because it's not a side B, it's a companion album. Because she made a breakup album and then she made a fucking like happy relationship album.
Yep. Yeah. The content on this, once I got to like listen to and got over how like excellent it was sonically, it was like, oh shit, like this is like she's happy. This is not it was not like the last one where it was more of a little more of a bummer. A bummer is a strong word for it, but you know what I'm saying, yeah.
By Carly standards, it was a bummer. Yeah. But I feel like that's faint though. It's like, you know, the artist who by her own admission writes only about love made a breakup album. But that was the feint, and she knew she had all these songs in her pocket, and then she gave you a euphoric rebound album. And you get that on like, and she found like, but is it a relationship or is it just she learned to be happy not being in a relationship? Because there are all these references to weekend lovers and, oh my God, they said fuck on the album, which I guess is a big deal. And she says it in a cool way too. So. She does say it in a cool way. I didn't even notice the first time. Yeah. But like Anything to Be With You, I think, is top 10, and it's right up there with Julian and Run Away With Me, as much as anything can ever be up there with Run Away With Me, which is, you know, very difficult. In terms of album openers, I love the live drums on it. I love the live sound on it. I feel like so much on this sounds like live instrumentation, which you kind of got on the last one. But I feel like the way those songs were constructed, you didn't really appreciate it because some of them had like, you know, downbeat lyricism. But then you have stuff that's electronic too, like more electronic leaning. Mainly I'm thinking of the one song that reminds me of Charlie, which is the Leaving the Past. Why can't I remember the name of that song? It's Left in the Past, or it's like right before Weekend Love.
Oh, Put It to Rest. Put It to Rest.
Put It to Rest, so the rest can't follow me. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great song. That's one of the
best. It is.
Yeah.
Somebody in the comment box complaining it doesn't sound like anything else she's ever done. Great.
No, I want repetition, Patrick. I want my artist to make the same thing over and over. That's what I want.
Well, I mean, Carly can do that too, and also amazing. But I think what's thrilling about her is that she has music that always sounds comfortingly familiar, but evolves.
Yeah, no question. Okay, so when I first dropped, I was like, this is amazing, and this is like, you know, I have to listen to it. But then I got caught up listening to some other stuff, I'm not going to lie. So then I went back to it, you know, in preparation for this episode, maybe like end of last week, really dug in, and I was just like, holy shit. And then, you know, a couple days ago, I messaged you and I was like, I've just listened to like this run. I could listen to like this run of songs like all day.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel about it, like overall. There's so much life, and there's such a richness to it, and enthusiasm and love, and I think it's just an excellent record. So.
Yeah. There's so many little moments on it, like when she has, I don't know if it's the engineer or whatever, like talk to her like, hey Carly, like right before Stadium Love, is this a good idea?
Oh yeah, I love that one. The little skits, yeah.
What else is there? I love how I'm pretty sure that they're like Shy Boy, Psychedelic Switch, Come Over. I think those are all the ones she talked about doing in the Sweat Disco album. I think those are all the songs she wrote for that, or at least some of them. Because she said she wrote a whole disco album for dedicated sessions, and those are the ones that showed up for that.
Right.
Aeroplanes, I think, is very underrated in terms of both like lyricism and just like being like just like lovely little melody writing.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's in a stretch. It's tough because it's surrounded by like a stretch of songs that's like some of the best on the album. Or I guess it predates a stretch of songs. I think this is some of the best on the album. Like obviously Shy Boy is like an absolute heater. You know, Collage. I mean, I can talk about that song forever. And then Shadows, Psychedelic Switch, you know, then the ending like ballad runs. Like I just think that she that one is like, there are little pockets of each song, especially in the beginning, where I find myself like walking around after like kind of humming them, which is, you know, that's what music is for, right? So that definitely stuck with me on the repeated listens, like in the recent days in preparation for us talking about it, is like, okay, not only is this great and like better than the last album, but it actually takes a step forward in a way that maybe like, and I think you mentioned this in your review because I texted you and I was like, I was nodding along to it. It almost like recontextualized the last album for me.
Right. In terms of the choices she made production-wise, compositionally, I feel like it illuminates a lot of those. And it passes so many of my tests for like a live with classic album. Like there are multiple runs that I can listen to. I put on one song, I want to listen to the whole thing. It makes me appreciate aspects of her previous work. It feels like she's evolved in terms of her lyricism, which I don't think she gets enough credit for. I feel like it's also a piece with, like I said, the Charlie album. Like the Charlie album feels like the start of quarantine to me. And I know fucking the pandemic will never be over. It's never over. But I feel like this feels like at least some kind of sunshine breaking through. Like that's what I get out of this. Because like the Charlie album, it just feels like the Charlie album has so much about wanting to go outside, and this feels like the first notes of this feel like breaking outside and going out and being with people, because it's the happiness companion album to a sadness album. And I don't know if she intended it that way with the Charlie thing. I'm sure she didn't. Although, again, the one song very much reminds me of I Finally Understand. And she obviously worked with Charlie in the past. So, but I feel like that's a headcanon connection I'm making to two albums I love. But I adore this album. There's nothing I would change about it. I find new things to appreciate about it every single time I listen.
Yeah, and I think I will, not only do I do that, but I will continue to find more things. A lot of times I listen to it in like pockets, but there's definitely been at least 2 occasions where I put on a song and then I've just let the rest of the thing go just because I'm enjoying myself so much. So yeah, love it. This will be a top 10 record, spoiler, at the end of the year. I mean, let's be real. If you guys ever listen to this podcast, you know where this was heading. I mean, come on. Like, right. it goes without saying.
Hear about Carly and Billy Woods at the end of the year. Like, I'm pretty sure that's a safe bet. Like, Drake, if you want to put that on your betting tab.
It wouldn't actually be enough. It wouldn't be enough to make up for the previous dead. You know, it wouldn't pay out enough for Drake.
So, yeah, I mean, all it's going to be is endless gushing. So we'll save something for the end.
We'll save something. This is the probably my third or fourth listen. I was like, man, I wish we had Travis on this one. But he'll have so much to say. I'm sure.
Yeah, he's got. And like I've already seen him in the rare positive thing to say about the comment box, saying some real good shit in the comment box.
Oh no, like the novel is coming at some point, so I'm ready for the Travis novel. We're gonna have it. You know, check back in late December. We will be here no matter what. And you will definitely.
We've dragged ourselves to some pretty dire circumstances to do those end of year episodes, so we'll be here.
Oh, they're gonna be there. It's gonna be a great one this year for sure, judging by how good things have been lately. But yeah, the Carly record, like you said, there's going to be a lot of platitudes, a lot of gushing, but for good reason. We love Carly. And by the way, once again, this is a classic thing that we rail against all the time, but it's like, I'm reversing it. Carly and Charlie definitely have been, speaking of the comparisons, have been fighting for that, best pop artist of the last decade title. So interesting that they both put out so much great material, but this is just another chapter.
One artist that has something coming out that I haven't been super up on lately, but did work with Jessie Ware, I believe it was recently, is Kylie Minogue has something coming out in September that I'm really interested to check out.
I'm sure it's going to be good. Yeah.
Given the whole wave lately, I think she's probably going to put out something at least good. So. Yeah,
because she, if my memory serves me correctly, she came back in 2020, right, with an album. Let me take a look.
No, she did Disco. I think it was called.
It was 2020, yeah, with Disco. Yeah,
because it was Trav that put me onto that, and then she put out Disco extended mixes, which I have at like a 9 because it's real fucking good. And so yeah, I'm pretty hyped for this. So.
No, I'm sure it'll be good, like most of her work. So yeah, shout out Kylie. But yeah, I mean, that's good to talk about Carly, and we alluded to this earlier, but an album that came out Granted, this is a very different record, but an album that came out
Yeah, just a little bit.
quite. Here, how about this? I'll transition this way because I'm gonna talk about something for maybe 2 minutes that I know you haven't heard, but those people that know me in real life or on the internet on RYM or in the server know that I'm a massive fan of this other record, which is like a version of I think great pop music, but it's Sisterhood by Lostrushi, an artist that I've been just constantly fawning over lately. But this came out also shortly after we dropped the mid-year, and I have played it nonstop. It was an artist that I was only very vaguely familiar with previously, but he makes like this just a beautiful mix of an infusion of like cloud rap stuff and like modern digicore and some like post jewel set sounds going on there. It's a mismatch, it's a genre mismatch, and I feel that it all coalesces and comes together beautifully. It has some of my favorite melodies of the year, some of my favorite hooks of the year. Even though for half the hooks on the album, at least, I'm being generous, you can't really parse everything that is being said, so you just feel it. You just have to feel it. There's a great quote by famed director Chris Nolan, maybe you've heard of him, when he was just like, just feel it, don't think about my movies, just feel it, which may turn the tide on him. Actually, I think we're in a good position now with Chris. But anyway,
seen Oppenheimer. I was going Logan Paul take on it, and then I was kind of like, I don't know. Feels like so.
I was gonna see it until Logan Paul told me not to. I was wrong. I was led astray. Yeah, seeing it in IMAX soon. But anyway, we'll have some Oppie talk on that.
If it's still playing, maybe next weekend. I think I'm maybe trying to see that. So if it's still playing at the IMAX around here, we'll see. Because I feel like the movie turnover isn't what it used to be in terms of week to week. So I think it's probably
Well, this is the rare case of it's been out for like a month and a half, and it's still going to run for as long as people want it to run because it's made so much money that now the studio doesn't like. They're just like, oh, we're just gonna we just see green, we just see dollar signs.
Well, of course, it's not like it's liberal propaganda. It's not like Sound of Freedom. They're not trying to hustle it out of theaters.
No, of course not. That it's not a real it's not a real movie.
Right. I do love. I'll give another nice thing to say about the comment box is the Sound of Freedom comment box has some pretty funny comments about like the liberal conspiracy about like went to see Sound of Freedom. They put a tack on my seat.
Oh yeah, they put a chip in my popcorn. Yes. Anyway, don't see Sound of Freedom. See Oppenheimer. Go to the movies. Have a good time. And listen to Sisterhood by Lostrushi. Great record. I will be talking about it on the end of the year as well, for sure.
Well, real quick, since you did like a lightning round thing before we get to the next one, I'll just mention 2 records that I know you haven't heard. At least one that you would definitely enjoy is Stacking Chips by Zilla, Rocca, and Jason Griff, which I just heard yesterday. Has a lot of old sports references you would enjoy, much like Sedale Threat did. It also has a great track called Love is Doomed about how Zilla Rocca does not want to go to an annoying party with his girlfriend because he just wants to watch the Red Bull Music Academy Doom lecture. Which is fucking awesome. It also has another amazing track about how the car theft is the #1 source of crime in South Philly. And I don't know if you're familiar with the old Viper car theft alarm system commercials.
No, okay. I'm not.
But it's like this car. It was this thing that would air on like late night television. It was a car alarm that was mimicked the sound of a snake hissing at you. Called Viper. And so it's Zilla Rocca rapping about how cars get stolen in South Philly, and then Sketch 185 raps the hook, heavy air quotes, about how this car is protected by Viper because like if your car had a Viper car alarm, it would say it would have his bumper sticker on the back saying, "Attention thieves, this car is protected by Viper."
That's crazy. I have to watch this. I have to watch that.
The commercial because it has a 90s CGI of your car turning into a snake.
See, you already had me, but now you have a car turning into you have exorbitant and weirdly used CGI. Now I'm in.
And then, like, but to sell you on the album is like Sketch 185 yelling this hook at you is great. The album is just hilarious. It's hilarious, full of Philly details, of course, with Zilla. It's probably my favorite Zilla post original intended retirement with future former rapper alongside of well, Sundial Threat doesn't really count because it's a Posse album. Midnight Suns, which I talked about on the year end a few years ago. I love this album on one listen. Jason Griff on a crazy run lately with the Alaska album, which I'll hear about on the year end, and his beat tape, which I mentioned briefly on the mid-year. And the other album I want to mention is, I kind of talked about this briefly, was Open Mike Eagle, Another Triumph of Ghetto Engineering. It's a very brief album. It's about 25 minutes. It's kind of a thematic extension of what he talked about on his rapped about on his previous album. Something Auto Reverse, very long title. That seemed to be more about rap that had influenced him from the 80s and early 90s. This seems to be more about his career starting as a rapper. There's a lot of shout outs, including two very unfortunate ones, two rappers he worked with. I'll leave it up to the listener to figure out who those two rappers are. If you've listened to the album, you know what they are. But it's really cool in terms of him rapping over stuff that is more experimental than you're used to. I believe Trav, again, shout out Trav, mentioned Cities of Eve in the Server. It's kind of similar to that. He's got a lot of child actor production on there. He doesn't get a lot of work lately, but in the early 2010s, he worked a lot with Nacho Picasso and Blue Sky Black Death. So if you know them, you know that sound. It's really cool to hear Open Mic over that. Really great Blue feature. The other features are a little distracting. Again, we mentioned Killer Mike earlier. Shout out to fellow landlord Hannibal Burris, has a feature on here as well under a pseudonym that's not great. It's fine. They all sound kind of like I would describe all of the open mic features as like doing a sort of I'm trying to okay, so this is gonna go a bit afield. I'm trying to think of when we talk about the next album, I'm going to mention this guy Zaloopers as I'm thinking about ways to review his recent stuff and talking about how he's like associated with Danny Brown, but he's different than a lot of weed carriers who, like, if you listen to like a main rapper's weed carriers, you think about like, if you like that, try this. And so with Mike's weed carriers, they're sort of like trying to be Mike, but they land somewhere better than like, they're doing the Mike Eagle like punchline rap style a little bit, and they're trying to be him, and they're landing better than like Chance does that style or used to do that style a little bit. They're better than Chance, but they're worse than Paul Barman, I guess. It's that sort of quirky, like offbeat rap style, and it can be kind of distracting and annoying if you're in the wrong mood. And they're better at it on this album than they were on the last one. But for an album that's so short, it does feel like they're taking up time where you could be hearing Mike rap. So that's the one real detracting thing about the album. But other than that, I really enjoy it. It's unconventional. A lot of hungry Mike verses here. The one verse where he talks about early touring is the one song where he talks about early touring is great. Of course, there are a lot of like wrestling references I appreciate. And yeah, it's just Mike doing cool Mike verses over unconventional production. And it's the one album of his, I think, that's really especially not burdened by burden's the wrong word. That's not super high concept. Like, there is a concept. He's always working with concepts, but it feels like the verses are looser and easier for something with such, maybe because it has such quote unquote difficult production, the verses are a little easier to get into. So highly recommend that as well. Also, Blue just dropped an album today with Real Bad Man, and that's as good as it sounds. So I've only listened to it once, but Blue over Real Bad Man production can't fucking miss. So real quick.
No, I have to check that. I have recent Blue I've kind of fallen off on, which is absolutely my own fault. So
not much of it, but I mean, Real Bad Man, 3 for 3 this year. Boldy, best Cool Keith in a long time, and now this. So yeah, Real Bad Man.
Yeah.
Never.
No, the Boldy record was sick. So yeah, I definitely support that assertion. Yeah, I mean, not much I can add in terms of stuff that in terms of lightning round material. I feel like a lot of that stuff, I can definitely save for later on in the year or other discussions. I will just say that over the last month I went to a couple of shows. I went to a 454 and Surf Gang show, which was a ton of fun. It was obscenely loud. I had to check my ears after, but outside of that, it was fantastic and a lot of fun. And I also went to a Days God show, which outside of going to the wee hours of the morning and me damn near falling asleep on the train ride back home was also a ton of fun. So both great artists, both have put out really good material this year. Love their work, and I guess that's what I got. And then we'll have plenty more stuff that we both like on the end of the year. So I won't want to spoil all that.
All right. Yeah. Hopefully, I have 1 or 2 show reviews coming by the end of the year. I'm working on some stuff. We'll see. We'll not. I have a 2-year-old.
I will say that one of the funniest moments of the year, in my opinion, was when Days God found my RYM and tweeted about something I wrote on the train ride back. Essentially, my scribble thoughts about the show and going to shows in New York in general, because I was extremely bored and tired. So I wrote it in my log, my listening log. And then somehow he found it, and then he tweeted about it and was like, very true, or very fair statements here by RYM user OptimalAudio. I was like, yeah, well, thanks. I appreciate that. But also, just the most, I responded, and I was like, how did you find this? He was like, sometimes I look at what people say about me in RYM. Sometimes I want to see constructive criticism. I was like, wow, that's so real of you.
Very rare positive interaction from an artist with RYM. Normally it's Jeff Barrett telling that we're a bunch of nerds, or some guy who I forget did an album with either August Fanon or Iceberg Theory, and somebody said he has the most. I think it was Boris Gigachat. Shout out to Boris, I like him. But whatever, said this guy has the most annoying rap voice, and then their only post ever, they made an RYM account, was just to say in the C box, all caps, then don't listen.
That's really more what RYM is actually like. But so some people are they approach it with an open mind and an open heart. So shout out to Days God. I mean, that was really cool, and it was just genuinely funny. I was just surprised that anyone even found my log, which is also terrifying because if I've ever overshared, I don't want that to be out there. But it is what it is.
Gradually trying to delete all many of my logos over time.
Yeah, I know. I usually don't, but hey, maybe I'll consider it.
I have a child to think of. Anyway, so moving on. So Veeze.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that you talk about favorites of the year. Spoiler alert: this will guaranteed slam dunk, no matter what happens for the rest of the year, be in the top 5. I hate to ruin the suspense, but it's going to be there. This was an album that I had been anticipating since the single came out in the spring, and I would say it delivered with flying colors, in my opinion. And I can't say enough good things about it, but what I actually want to do is hear your thoughts, because I do know your thoughts, on a baseline, but this is not a rapper that I believe you would only heard on features previously. So, what did you think about listening to the full length?
I really, really enjoyed it, and the only feature I'd heard, was not able to place him on. He was on Michigan Boy Boat, and perhaps on some Neff stuff that I couldn't place either. A lot of times, Neff has so much stuff, I don't really. Maybe I can bring up his RYM. That would be great radio. But just basically, I only listened to it once in full. And then again, a little bit today, I listened to some tracks I really like just as a refresher. So I'm not nearly as well versed on it as you. I wanted to be able to just call up lines because there's so many good lines. But what was the single, by the way, just without having to...
The single was GOMD, Get Off My Dick.
Oh, that would explain why it has the Uzi remix at the end then.
Yes. Yeah. The single that had been a song that fans had heard snippets for a while, and it finally came out, and it was. I mean, that's still one of the best songs of the year to me. I fucking love that song.
Well, honestly, first impression off of it was that I got a little shit for this from shout out to Dane in the Discord from Dane about thinking it was constructed a little bit like an Opium sort of album, like the Lonely album, but obviously his style is very different. His style reminds me a little bit more of, I've said Gucci, E40, but on listening to more individual stuff, and this is not going to be a surprise considering where he's from, he reminds me more of the Loopers, I would say. Just very much like a quirky punchline guy in the best sort of way. His punch, they hit in 2 or 3 different levels. They're always funny. if you're going to go like a punchline rap album for an hour, you got to be funny. And there's really only one track on here I didn't think had engaged me the whole way. There's like one song for the women type thing, which is still not a bad song. I'm struggling to call it off the top of my head.
Is it Kind of Money, or is it Kind of Money is the one before GIAG?
I want to say like it's probably that. It's probably
Kind of Money.
I feel like it might have been later than Kind of Money though, but it was like on the back end.
Let's
But it's
see.
like he has like a line on my favorite song. I'm pretty sure it's on my favorite song, Robert De Niro, where he's like, I treat all because I love like a piece of shit. Like, piece of shit. And it's like it's kind of hard for me to take that seriously, and it's like
because he has so many like it's like it's delivered with a wink, you know.
Correct. So like, and Zaloopers has like plenty of lady songs, but there's so much self-awareness in them. Like, again, not the same genre whatsoever in terms of or thematic lane as Noname, but Zaloopers is the same sort of thing where he's exploring all, like, he has nuance to his stuff. So when he does those lady songs, like, he can do so many of them because he has like a multi-dimensional personality. Whereas I felt like the one time there was a lady song on here, it felt like, okay, I got to do something for the bitches type thing, whatever.
Yeah, I don't. Whatever song you're, and I hear you. I don't know what song you're referring to.
I wish I could really.
I'll have to parse through it and see, because I never got that vibe from any song on here, and I don't even mean this in like a negative or a positive. I just don't mean like I don't.
There was one song that had like a slower, again, like my one full listen was at work, so I could be like completely off base here, but I feel like there was one song where it felt like he was doing like lines, like, again, it wasn't like he was crooning. There was no Anthony Hamilton type hook, whatever.
Right, yeah.
But
there's no R&B feature. Obviously, there's
no Chris Brown feature on here.
Yeah,
but
no feature. Well, the only features are on are little sparse. They're littered through.
And they're all great. Like 77 Sixers is my second favorite song on here, I would say. Like, that's a great run, actually. Like, the best I would say the best run is the one with the features in the middle, and that's also great sequencing. Your best run's in the middle. It's not the beginning or the end. Like, so the more I think about it, it's actually differently. It kind of debunks my opium argument. Like, I need to listen to this more. Like, I don't know if it's going to end up on my year end. It's definitely going to end up on my honorable mentions, though. I'm really glad you brought this to my attention, because he's way more of an artist up my like lane than I would have thought. Because I thought it was going to be more of a Trippie Redd type situation, honestly, or even a Lucky situation. I saw Lucky on the track list. I'm like, okay, like, and he has that slurry flow, but like from the second he started rap, I'm like, okay, this is more what I'm into. I
thought it was very cool that you, and interesting that you talked about E40 and that type of thing, because the Detroit and like Michigan, Flint style of rap is very punchline driven. We kind of had that conversation in the Discord a little bit as well this week, where it was like, I was referencing a lot of like Rio, Rio the Young OG, who they've been on songs together. They've been on songs with associates and whatnot, other artists from that area. And it's like, he is so, like, that is like punchline, like nonstop. And it's like, there's usually humor involved, or there's like, there's a lot involved. There are similarities there. But Veeze, what I love about him and what I've sold to other people to get other people into him who had previously hadn't heard of him or didn't have much interest or what have you, or didn't even like necessarily this style of rap music, it was like, the dry humor, the dryness of the humor, and the wit, the very like almost like sardonic like wit, the fact that he is, like I said, saying stuff with a wink sometimes, or he'll just offhandedly say stuff like, well, also you talk about Robert De Niro, the one line, but then I love the fact when he's like, I'm losing my mind with this money. She asked for 1,000, I'm gonna give her 2. I'm too indecisive. Her and her friend want to ride it, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, he's just like, throwing these like little lines out there like it's nothing, and I find that
so cool. Like, also like a bit second, like it's a step further than like surface level than a lot of rappers would do, just because like you ain't a made man, you acting like Robert De Niro. Like, you're not just acting like an actor, you're acting like an actor in a mob movie.
Yeah.
He managed to like take it one step further than a lot would just on that surface level thing. But then every line on that just like hits too. Like the slant rhyme, like his flow's great. Like the reason he reminds me of Zaloopers a lot, aside from he's like punchline and from the air, like same basic region, is like his his basic flow, his like I guess home flow, resting flow, whatever, kind of reminds me of like one of his Loopers flows. It's like a slurry, like slant rhyme flow. Like he can rhyme like swollen with whatever he rhymes on, like Robert De Niro. He like has swollen rhyme with but you know what I'm talking about. Like
yes, where the words it's not conventional, but then the words can essentially rhyme together and match. Yeah,
but I'm trying to think of a specific example on that song, and yeah, it's I don't know.
I
really enjoy. Oh yeah, but the example I wanted to make was that I originally talked about in my review E40 and Gucci. I want to say that he also reminds me of 21 Savage a lot in terms of like really dry delivery. Like some of his jokes are a little bit like 21 saying like, "Bitch ass, did you do your chores today?" But
yeah,
just very, very dry, and it's like feels thrown off. By the time you catch the one thing he said, he's already on to the next one.
100%. I mean, I got to talk about on Not a Drill reminds me of only this. I mean, Not a Drill is amazing. I love that song, but and that's one of the more like energetic, songs on the record, I think. But when he talks about, he says on the album multiple times, like, I don't have a barber, but these hoes say I'm adorable. It's like one of like the motifs on the album, but it's little shit like that where it's so funny. He also talks about, on Met Gala, the Gucci and Offset song, after when Gucci's talking about like 4 bitches trying to swallow me, I feel like I'm fighting an octopus.
Yeah.
Veeze on Not a Drill says 3 hoes on me at once. This shit like Alvin and Chipmunks, which is I quote that like nonstop. I love and that follows a string of bars where he's like, Veeze a fucking hoodlum. No way no kid look up to him. Came about the slums, but next house gonna have a butler. Like it's just nonstop bars. You're gonna be, he takes a swipe at. He's like, I'm Kobe Bryant. You're DeMar DeRozan. Like there's all this like stuff for. I love when he's like, I never hated before, but dog so broke I'm praying for him. Like his haters are so broke he's praying for him. Like
I think like the first 4 bars is a shot at Diddy.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
First shot at Diddy. He makes a Pistol Pete reference. I'm always a sucker for a Pistol Pete reference.
Makes a Paul Wall reference. Like Paul Wall the album. Yeah. Wall. He's like, me. I pull a Pluto move. Take your wife like Scottie Pippen. Future Scott Yarsa Pippen. Yeah. There's just so much. I love I could just go on for days about the lines, but the one on the boat interlude, which by the way, I love that song because it's like so like Yachty, like they pitch shift the vocals and they change everything. Yeah, that's great. And when he's like he says what he says, my mama said she made me great. I think it's the drugs. Like just crazy lines. Very offhanded. I mean, and it's such a variation too in the production from song to song and different moments in the album. One that I think about a lot too is like, once again, you just get me started. I'm going to talk about lines in the album, but Who the One, which are my favorites, where it has like that very like that beautiful sample and the vocal chop in the background, and then he's like what he said, he makes like it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman reference, but he's like, it's Captain Save-A-Ho. Like, instead, it's so funny.
Yeah.
He's like, it's Captain Save-A-Ho. Look at the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. Like, he's just, it has not just like a wit to it, but like some silliness to it, which I really appreciate.
This one being so just like lively kind of makes up for the Thug album being so full. Like I listened to the Thug album once. I didn't,
me too. It didn't need a second listen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could have gone in disappointments, but I couldn't think of anything to say.
100%. No, and you know what? That's a great point because this came out not that long after that album came out, and it was like, I mean, I love he like Chris Rock's dad when it comes to spending. I mean, there's just so many. There's just so many. I'm high off yellow pills like I'm flying on Spirit. It's just
there were like, I think I said in the Discord, like literally like 3 or 4 times I like legit laughed to my like out loud. I was listening at work, 3 or 4 like laugh out loud lines where I just like myself like a fucking moron.
Yeah. And no, and I like the fact that, you know, toward the end you have some of the more like personal songs, like toward the end it's structured in that way where you have like something more personal, like, you know, introspective is the wrong, like not the right word, but just like
more introspective, I would say.
Yeah, more introspective. I feel like Gangermatic is one of my favorite songs, and it's like it runs the gamut from talking about how, like in the beginning, you know, how he was back then, and now everyone's like, oh, you know, like, but now if you know, if you don't do him a favor, they're not going to answer the phone when you call them, or that type of shit. There's like little stuff here and there where he's, you know, he's still got that paranoia of, well, if I don't make it, if I'm not big anymore, like people are going to kick dirt on me, you know, the whole stuff. So there's a really like down to earth quality about it as well, and it ends with Tony Hawk, which any song called Tony Hawk I'm gonna like, and you know, he says I don't give a fuck how old I am, I'm still gonna grind like Tony Hawk, which I think is a great mission statement. So yeah,
a great hook too. Like, I mean, that's so many great rap hooks on this. Like, you gotta appreciate just like a purely rapped album, like front to back. It doesn't have any song hooks necessarily.
100%. That's a great point. This is like it's just a rapping rap album. Like, for lack of a better phrasing, it's just like a straight ahead terrific rap album. And we just had that whole, you know, conversation about all the BS and all the discourse, whatever, about rap and its supposed dying and commercialization and yada yada yada. And so you get an album like this that organically built up over time. You know, Veeze 3 years ago had, you know, 20% of the following he does now. It was all regional. There's a regional artist that built himself up over time, had leaks, had organic interest, was not known by the mainstream. Other rappers fuck with him so much who are more popular than him, came on this album, were on the album. He made an album that was true to himself and just made an album with great rapping and great hooks and great songwriting and funny bars like I've just quoted for the last 5 minutes. So I feel like if that isn't a testament to the liveliness of rap and what it still is today and what it thrives at, this is a perfect album for that, because this is a totally organic thing that it's now doing very, very well, and his fan base has exponentially grown as a result of it, but it's only grown as a result of the music.
Right, and I'm glad you brought up the point about him being like really like, you know, down to earth and relatable, because I think that's a common quality in the best punchline rappers like 40, Gucci, Ludacris at his best, Redman, and I think he shares that quality, and that's why he's able to get away with more like you know, introspective tracks at the end. So, and that's why he's able to do this type of album for like an hour too, like just almost solely punchlines. Like, you don't get any, like concept tracks or whatever.
Right.
So,
right. And the fact that there was allegedly, I mean, I'm not even doing this to be like, you know, oh, I'm so cool, but like I've spoken with someone close to the Veeze team, just I met them in passing, and they talked about how there was a lot of like whittling down on this album, and that seems like clear to me, because it's obvious that, you know, this album was 3 years plus in the making. It was like clear that there was a lot of material, and they actually did the rare thing of picking the best songs. So doesn't happen. Yeah, it doesn't always happen.
Yeah, there's actual editing process going on. Which
Yeah. So
rare to see.
But I can't get enough of this. It's definitely been my most played record of the summer. I've been annoying in the server about it, so I'm glad that Patrick listened. I'm glad that you liked it a lot, and that you're really enjoying it. So that's a big personal win, you know, on the podcast, and another W for the Living Off Borrowed Time podcast.
I'll definitely be revisiting it more, and I hope to do a lot more Michigan rap stuff in the future, Detroit rap stuff in the future. Hope to maybe have Dane on. Hope to do his Loopers episode. I've been talking about this Loopers episode for a while, so maybe that's in the next year.
Dane should definitely come on and do. Like I said, he and I discussed briefly about the connection between Detroit and West Coast music, and how there's always been a fondness for, Draco the Ruler and a lot of like Ralphie, those guys, as it relates to these, Michigan, Detroit artists. So I think that's a really cool crossover episode that we could definitely do, and I'll say we will do one day. We will have him on to do that episode for sure. I think it's a good topic. So yeah.
I mean, also a Draco episode or an E40 episode. Like, I mean, there's also should be,
You want to be here for 10 hours for E40 episode? I mean, we'll do it. But
I think we probably just need to like have a list that's just episodes we're going to subject Sophia to do, and E40 is probably on that list. So
the Draco episode is a good. No, that's also a good idea. It would be nice to listen to a lot of that material. But yeah, and that ties into an album that we still need to get to.
I was going to say there was once a rapper who said that he was swinging like E40 on a door hinge, and I believe that gets to. Well, you were going to go with the Draco reference. Actually, that would have been much
we both had good transitions.
Of course, made a lot more sense though. So, but the album we're going to close on here is one that is from a rapper that we've discussed at length on the podcast, with an album that's been a long time in the making.
One of our favorite mutual artists.
Yes. And an album that, by the way, I don't think is, just to get this out of the way, this is not the album that he's making people search for on YouTube. I think that's a dumb discussion that I think he's trolling people with this. This is not, there is no album on YouTube. I think that someone came
100%.
And he's just it's both kind of funny, but I think it's dumb that people just keep making that the discussion. There is no fucking album on YouTube. And Alchemist is playing you guys for fools. Anyway, obviously the album we're going to close on here, The Alchemist, Earl Sweatshirt, Voir Dire. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. It's the Latin legal term for the truth. And
I'm glad that you pronounced it, because I'm sure I would whiff on whatever the pronunciation is. So I'm glad that you went for it.
Two semesters of paralegal classes, and I listened to a law podcast. You would think that I would know how to pronounce this term. He doesn't actually say it on the record at all. Although I think the concept's obviously he's speaking the truth about like certain things. Right. Again, I don't know if anyone's done the whole, like, this used to be a talking point that Earl raps about nothing. Like, I really don't think you should say that about this album, because there's so much like here, but I haven't heard that.
And by the way, even if that were the case, I don't care if it sounds good. And guess what? It sounds amazing. So
the one thing I mean, that he sounds like he doesn't care, which that's.
Yeah, you and I have both. I mean, we talked about this about some rap songs way back, about how we just like vehemently like disagree. Not only disagreed strongly, but like actively would go to war verbally with someone who felt that way. I mean, to me, it is so disingenuous and disrespectful to even insinuate that.
Well, I mean, artists change their delivery with time, and obviously Earl's delivery reflects where his mental state is at, and he's also artistically restless. No Earl album sounds the same. No Earl album is written the same. It reflects, again, his place in life. And there are songs on here that are animated. There are songs on here that have his quote-unquote depressed flow, and that reflects the topic that he's rapping about. I've listened to this like nonstop all week, and I don't think any one song here has the same flow as another song. But again, with the Noname album, let's just get the one elephant in the room thing that annoys us out of the way. Fucking FTs.
Yeah, you would think that they were dead after all this time.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Real, how the sausage is made, real quick peek behind the curtain. I only ever use Skype to record this podcast, and I opened my Skype and I had like 5 or 6 like open conversations, quote unquote, with crypto things. That like I have crypto spam in my Skype now.
Oh, interesting. I never noticed that with mine.
But yeah, I really would think that crypto is like not doing well, but I guess now it's like devolved to the level of just like, email spam. Like that's how well it's doing. But
yeah, it's definitely not doing well in terms of like from a financial perspective. But
I mean, it never was. That's the thing. It's always just been like a fucking scam. That
100%.
Appearance of doing well, I would say that. Which is why it's so surprising that this was the rollout for it. But again, Alchemist, I mentioned this in the server, Alchemist has always been like about merchandising everything. And I feel like he signed a deal with something, streaming service, whatever. And honestly, I was only so mad about again, back to the Black Star album, Black Star rolling out their shit with some transphobe streaming service. So I can't be super mad about this when it's going to be on regular streaming in a month. Like, it sucks. I wish that they wouldn't promote this crap, but it's not that hard to find. So that's the big negative about the album.
It is the only negative about the album, but it is a big one, but it is also divorced from the music. But I also agree with you, because when I first eventually found out that was the thing, I was like, oh, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Like, I was really pissed. And it obviously, like you said, it goes into Alchemist's long history with merchandising and this and whatnot. And my one minor take is that Alchemist is an amazing genius producer. I'm not going to dispute that. What I am going to dispute is he has this like crazy elevated status that I think also plays into some of this stuff, where it's like he kind of just has the ability to get away with doing whatever. So, now he's going to release this, cultivate the release of this like long-awaited project as part of like an NFT bundle shit. You're like, all right, fuck that. But,
it feels like contempt for his audience in the same way that continuously mentioning the YouTube album, quote unquote, does. Like, he knows he can work his audience's marks, so he does. Like, that's why he puts out like overpriced merch on his website too. They'll pay for it, right? Like, I mean, he still puts out amazing content, but he didn't release the Rock Marciano album like this. None of the Boldy albums come out like this. Like, but he knows that he puts Earl's name on something, he's going to be able to pull this shit, and people will follow it. So.
Yeah. People eat it up. He's in a position of privilege in that way, which, like, you just wish that it didn't happen at all. But I would kind of like the Noname record, and I would say this one tenfold. I would like not to bog it down, because once I get over the awful taste in my mouth about that whole thing, I actually open up the album, and then the distaste melts away. So
yeah, everything about this is fucking remarkable to me. I love it more with each successive listen. I just love the way Earl writes and raps so much. I think that, honestly, the comparison that comes to me more and more about this one is the Lupe record, Drill Music in Zion, because it feels like an album about a city. It feels like it's an album from an incredibly talented writer that came in a very short period of time with a collaborator that he's really comfortable with, and every song is about a concept in a way that draws more and more on the concept the more and more you listen. Like, think about Vin Scully, for example. Like, he just has a baseball concept, and he draws, and like, I feel like that baseball concept is about him dealing with addiction in a way that plays on like everything he was talking about on Sick, and about how like people are throwing him pitches like snake oil salesmen, but he's going to slide away from them. And like, a lesser rapper would be like, think about Logic talking about something like that, how fucking corny that would be. But Earl so fucking effortless, and he has such a like effortless flow about that, and then he ties it into like the Walk Hard reference too, which is so clever too. Like, he manages to like do like a double Walk Hard reference about like being chopped in two, and also the you don't want none of this shit, do we? I don't know if you're familiar with Walk Hard, but like, he's actually like really like, going in depth with like the movie in a way that like ties into the theme, but you don't need to know any of that when you listen to it, because his flow is so good.
It's just it's like freaking water. I mean, Earl on this is just, every song he sounds about as comfortable as you can sound over all these different beats. And I gotta tell you, like, when I heard like My Brother the Wind for the first time, I got like emotional. Like, it was so beautiful. And even backtracking for a second, the intro when he's like, I forget the thing that sets up the punchline, but he talks about like beating the cheesy joke. Oh yeah, like the dead horse or something like that. Oh yeah. My god.
It actually reminded me a little bit of like Beat the Freaking Beat Up Like It Stole From Me.
Like it stole, like, yeah.
A little bit like that on Huey. Like, I feel like there are little callbacks too, like on track 4 where he talks about like I remember when I didn't have shit. That's not right, but like I remember Nowhere to Go. Like,
yes. I remember Nowhere to Go. Yeah.
Like, he's always like calling back to his previous work in a way that's clever, but doesn't feel like fan service, doesn't feel like pandering. It's like so much about it. Like, I remember Horse in the chat was talking about how it felt like it's really good, but it feels like Al and Earl in their comfort zones. I don't see that as a negative, because I feel like that's just like, these guys are at the top, absolute peak of their powers, like peak performance right now. And also, Alchemist is in his comfort zone. He does not produce things that sound like he's not an assembly line. Like the Earl album doesn't sound like the Spitta album, doesn't sound like the Rock album, doesn't sound like the Boldy album. He's giving everybody something uniquely suited to what they're best over. Even if he's the same sort of like jazz aesthetic, sort of like it, like there's nothing on any of those other albums that sounds anything like Century, for example. And I feel like Century is kind of a piece, like that was the lead single, sort of like Earl put out a lead single that's like a little bit structureless and off-putting for everything. Like Feet of Clay had East, Nowhere to Go, and like Grief for I Don't Like Shit, I think was off-putting for people because it was so abrasive. And I think that Century a little bit is also a piece with the duet. Like he's had the Navi and Navy songs before. Now he has one of those with Mike too. Although he had All Star with Mike on Mike's album, but now he has one of those with like now he's a trilogy of those with the Alchemist songs. So they're kind of on a arc as well. So
I love when he says I'm in the mall with the Jordan face.
Yeah, there's still like dry humor on this too. It's like Earl's never not funny. Like I mean,
I love the I know I'm playing the tough crowds. Convert the data till our races can whip the bus round. We're about to shake the taco truck down. Nah, I'm playing point a couple at the bus down. That is, I love that little like couple bars there.
Yeah, you were talking about My Brother the Wind.
Yeah, My Brother the Wind. Yes. Yeah.
Godspeed You, Black Emperor. Looking like Sun Ra.
My brother like Sun Ra. Yeah.
Like that's like my brother. Like that's so much crazy wordplay about playing on like my brother. I call my brother Son. Like we're all gods. Like that's some real like just clever shit in a few bars. But playing, I don't even know what the sample is there. I don't know if it's a Sun Ra sample or not, but it kind of sounds like Madlib sampling Cortex on Mad Villain. I
mean, I love all the small things when definitely one of the best songs on there when he's like, I never fumble even when I buckled under egregious demands. Future said the shit got colossal and I feel the man. Yeah, that's
see, he has like another thing I wanted to bring up was he quotes he has that Future thing. He has a line about Rock Marciano on the very end. Like keep the griddle hot word. I told Al keep the griddle hot word to Spitta. I feel like he has all these invocations of other artists he sees as peers. He also has all these lines about, putting money back into like his community. Like the line about like I saw the loose change, threw it back where I got it. And lines about like his city and like gentrifiers, politicians, like the whole Harvey Dent riff. So I feel like there's a lot of what this feels like to me overall as an overarching theme is like Sick was him in a dark place and trying to get out of it. This is him getting out of that place. Ultimately, this is like the conclusion of that. And I think you can draw a direct line from Old Friend to R.I.P. Tracy on the Al album to Century here. And Century is him being a guard. I don't know. I tend to write like, I'm like Wyatt. I write these headcanon shits. But I feel like maybe not as elaborately as Wyatt.
Yeah, I'm thinking again about the Die Lit one, which still throws me for a loop.
Die Lit one's as wild as one of his fucking tacos. But...
random Wyatt strays. He's gonna he's gonna get mad at us. But no, I think that's a good point. What I wanted to ask you before we get into two things. One, Vin Scully, the intro is an excerpt from his last ever game that he called as the Dodgers announcer when he's talking about for every problem there's a faithful friend to share. For every side, a sweet song, and this, each answer a prayer. You and I have been friends for a long time, and then it trails off. But he's talking about how it's like it's the last home game of the season for the Dodgers in 2016, and that was like his last like address to all the fans, like on television. And he's he says at the end like soon winter will turn to spring again, and it'll be time for Dodger baseball again. Like you can watch the whole like thing on YouTube. It actually makes me emotional because obviously Vin Scully, probably the greatest ever, and passed away, R.I.P. But he that is like such a cool part to cut, and it makes me think about all of the little intros and outros and stuff that's like melded into the album, where it's like, what exactly, like the thing on the last track where it's like, the message I'm trying to give to my audience is make them understand me as a person. All those little things, like, there's so much meaning in all of them, and I haven't parsed through everything. Like, what's the one? There's one on the end. Oh, God, I forget what song. But there's one on the end where... this is terrible, because I want to figure out the song. It might be Century? Yes, it was like, how do we come here? It's got to be some poem or a play or something. But it's like, you know, how do we come here? Like, talk about the prince turning into a reclusive hermit.
Yeah, like this island, the one, yeah, like
yeah,
I don't know which one you're talking. It is Century. It's the end of Century.
Yeah, and it's definitely from a play, probably something famous. I can't even remember what it's from, but all of that stuff, to me, all of that goes out saying is very deliberate. It all means something. And there's little things that you can kind of like parse through and pick up more and more on repeated listens, even though it is on its face very laid back and direct.
Well, I feel like it's got a lot in common with Sick, and I think with
100% agree. Most similar to Sick,
and further on work in that it's on its face about something, but the more you peel it back, the more you unpack it, it's about multiple things. And I mean, I think there's 2 lines where he mentions he has a baby on the way. So I think that's the audience. That's who he's telling the truth to on this album. And that's why every track is about something specific. I feel like there's a lot about his home and about who's attacking his home. He talks about politicians, gentrifiers. I think all the small things is about his career. Like he talks about, I wasn't a seasoned chef Sweaty. Like I think that's about, like, you know, and his fans too. It's like still waters run deep, don't hold your breath. Like he's talking about people who don't like his style change, that he's like slower flow now. Like don't hold your breath for him to change back to who he was. Something like that.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely agree. He's so cerebral but effortless with it. It's never it never feels forced with Earl. I mean, that's why he's, you know, one of my favorite rappers and an artist that just over the years I have more and more and more and more appreciation for. Like my appreciation for Earl, I think since really I Don't Like Sick, my appreciation for Earl has like skyrocketed with each album. Not, once again, Doris is great. I'm not, you know, disputing that.
I mean, no.
It's just his career is recontextualized for me now that he's a personal favorite. So now it, like, you know, each album I pick up so much on, and you know, I'm attached to each one's in different ways. And I have no doubt that this one will be the same.
I found the poem, by the way, and it's on Genius, so I can click on them. I feel like this might be Hamlet, and I'm probably going to be proved wrong, although Genius is often fucking wrong, but I'll read the poem and then I'll see what the annotation is. Then how did we come here? And tell me, too, by what ill fortune did a prince turn in the reclusive hermit you are now on this desert isle? Was it because you found the world distasteful, or through the perfidy of some enemy? Is our island a prison or a hermitage? You've hinted at some mystery so many times to arouse my curiosity, and today you shall tell me it all. And then he goes into all the small things after that. But let me see what the annotation is.
The Tempest.
Yeah. The Tempest. There, I was close. I was fairly close. It was
Shakespeare. Yeah, it did sound like Shakespeare, but of course I'm not an expert on the subject, so
I'm not either.
Interesting. The daughter. It's spoken by the daughter of a powerful magician and slave master. Interesting.
And then you can think about it was a slave master, and then he talks about his career, and then being with Odd Future. There's also the reference to one of the Timberwolves. I was running with Wolves in the one song. That was obviously a basketball player name drop that you probably got well before I did, because I had to look it up.
Yeah, running with the Wolves. Yep.
Right.
It was with I think it was Carl Anthony Towns he talked about.
Carl Towns, yeah.
Yeah, Carl Towns, yeah.
And so you could read that one way too. So I'm guessing you said 2 things. The second thing was probably about the blast track, I assume.
Yes. The last song, which the one thing I love the beginning about them, like that whole, the message I'm trying to give my audience is not one. I'm just trying to make them understand me as a person. And obviously we have to say, Passion of the Voice reference. I mean, that's crazy. It might not be. There's a chance it's not, but it's so specific that I feel like it has to be at least a shout out.
I feel like this album is so Los Angeles centric. Like, I mean, Draco, Los Angeles references all over it. Weiss was a writer for a long time for LA Weekly, I believe it was.
He had multiple sit downs with Earl and has definitely written pieces about it before.
Weiss was a big part of Odd Future breaking out in the media there, so I feel like that's absolutely intentional. And again, I said this in the Discord, but it starts off with a Dipset I Really Mean It reference, Sun Ra referenced in title and lyric, ends with a Weiss reference. I think we can pretty safely say that Earl and Alchemist listen to our podcast.
Hey, the way that Earl is with online, you never know. I mean, Earl, you've been rapping over Evil Johnny beats on Making the Band. I mean, that's been my favorite producer for the last 3 years. So hey, I'm just saying, Earl interview. Just saying.
No, we don't interview any artists.
That's true. We don't need that. We're just we're just here to get our point across.
Even when we were wrong.
Even when we were wrong.
By the way, which is often. But I adore this last song. I feel like this ties everything up beautifully. I think that it has a lot in common with the themes that Woods is addressing on Maps a lot, which is interesting because one of the things Aaron brought up is that in a much more dismissive way than I would have, that Earl started hanging out. The way he put it was Earl started hanging out with Mock and Mike and started rapping completely differently, which yes and no. I feel like he changed his style, but I don't think he started rapping completely differently. I think he started adapting the things that were great about his previous style to the way they were rapping.
Yeah, I think he's just from some rap songs onward, he was just in a clearly different headspace, and even album to album in a clearly different headspace that I think informs his songs topically, thematically, and his actual delivery and the actual rapping on the songs. I think that's clear. You mentioned, and I 100% agree, it's so close to Sick. I think that this album is akin to Fire in the Hole. That's what I think about a lot when I think about this album. And Fire in the Hole was a fucking perfect song. I love that song. I talked about it on the End of the Year pod, how much I love the song. And it, we know, classic Caleb, beat rides out, very just conversational. This whole album is like that, and it's very personal, and it doesn't feel overbearing in any way, or Earl would never approach that, but it's just very personal and very funny occasionally, like we talked about as well. There's a lot to like about it, and I'm, forgive me for stumbling through my praise. I'm only about 4 or 5 listens in, but I mean, I can't say enough good things about it. And this is coming from someone that was predetermined to had a sour taste in my mouth because of the NFT stuff, but there was never going to be any denying this. So I fucking love it. So yeah. And spoiler, it will be in the top 10.
I feel like it's going to be in at least 2 of our top 10s. Can't speak for Trap, but at least 2 of our top 10s. But as far as the Woods thing goes, the point I wanted to make was that he absorbed a lot about their music, and one of the things I really like about this is that the hooks on this album have a lot of the same quality as Woods hooks do, where they feel like they're part of the rap verse, but they're distinctive. I'm thinking about where he, not the man, but the man on God. Well, that was more like the Loopers too. Another artist he's worked with who we were talking about, where I feel like some of his, he has that melodic quality, where he has that slurry melodic quality, as I slur, to some of his flows that he brings to his hooks, but also when he takes the rapped hook, it's just another little mini verse, and that's something that Woods does a lot. And I think that's one of Woods's qualities that he brought into his own music. And but Free the Ruler, I feel like definitely one of the themes of the album, I think that it shares with Maps, is mortality. And I think that what really informs this album is a fear of just one of the lines that he has on here is streetcar called Pride dropping off in the morgue. It's no free rides out here anymore. It's the end of the album, but it never really was. What he on Sick, he feels acutely aware of his own mortality. On this album, it seems like he's aware of mortality for everybody. Like everybody saw Sick, or at least the outward appearance of Sick was as the pandemic COVID album. But really, it's Earl reflecting on himself. Like as I kind of talked about on that episode, I feel like it's him talking about his own sickness and, using COVID as sort of a framework for that. Here, he's more his own community, his own city, and putting back into it. And then you have the lines about his child and kind of seeing mortality and a future and how to build upon that as a reaction to death. And I think that's definitely, there's a comparison to be drawn from Woods on Maps and the way the first and last lines of Maps, and the image that he ends Maps on as well. Two of my favorite albums of the year. And obviously something I can personally relate to as well. And I think something that what's the name of the podcast?
Yeah. Sums it up.
And we are living off borrowed time.
It ain't gonna never stop. 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 It ain't gonna never stop.
Time will tell. Time is yet to be conquered by man. But when the time is right, perhaps the greatest revelation of all time will dawn upon us.